Thank you, Poe. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, thanks for letting me speak. In a few minutes, what I'm going to do is present a work in progress, which is this thing, which actually, I actually filled out the form wrong. It's actually called Lobby Horse, not Lobby Hobby. It's one attempt to build a useful tool on top of open civic data. Really, I volunteered to do this out of purely selfish reasons. I'm looking for free consulting from you folks. I think, so two questions perhaps for later. One is, I do hope to get ideas from others who face the same kind of challenges that we'll see that maybe some of the civic open data brings to us. And the second, for anyone, has anyone actually dealt at all with lobbying data, with lobby registries and so on? All right, let's choose someone at random. Let's choose you. So what kind of things were you looking at? What were you using it?
I was looking for who had lobbied with respect to having like self-driving cameras on streets
Okay,
in Toronto.
right. Okay, thanks. So some people here have looked at some of that lobbying data. So, all right, so we'll get to this, but let's step back a bit. I mean, I think there's interest in lobbying data for the last few years in particular, and I think that's come about partly because of a couple of scandals, really, right? One was the Greenbelt scandal, when developers seemed to have an in on some of the land that was going to be removed from the Greenbelt for property development purposes, and there were questions of influence, and there were questions of who got to know what and who was talking to who, and about whether some of the lobbyists they'd hired had connections to the government and so on. And then the second one, I think more recently, was the Ontario government had a skills development program. I think most of the funding is federal, but they distributed it. And again, there were questions about how those funds were distributed, and it was over $1 billion, so it was not peanuts. And so apparently, I have to look down here, but about half of that, 740 million over 5 rounds, went to projects that were actually ranked lowly by the civil servants who were administering that fund. But it seems that because of political connections and so on, other priorities took place. So I think for those kind of reasons, people are saying, well, all right, so what is this lobbying process? How does it work? Who's looking at it? Who's doing what? And the good news about that is that pretty much every level of government now has what they call a lobbyist registry. So City of Toronto has a great one. Ontario has a crap one. The federal government has a really good one. But in which they record, you know, if you are a paid person who has an interest in a thing and you want to you want to talk to someone in government about it, you have to register, right? And you do that, and there's a record kept of what you've done, what you've talked about. So that's great. But then actually coming out of the Skills Development Fund with JJ and Torben, who are the two of the people on the line there, they said, trying to find out more about this is really difficult to work with the Ontario registry. You basically have to know exactly what you're searching for and take a long time to find it. So then can we just scrape the site and get it and then do stuff with it? So I did that because I have some background in doing that. So then we've got it in a database, or we've got it in a bunch of Excel spreadsheets, but you know how it goes, endless Excel spreadsheets going around. And if you don't quite know what you're looking for, problems. And then also, of course, you don't just want to know what's that stuff. You want to link it to other things as well, right? So over time, I thought, well, we had the scraping in place. We had a couple of other things in place. I thought, well, maybe instead of throwing things around, I can throw up a website and maybe start to see if we can do that. And I thought at the same time, well, this might be an interesting, because this was back in like December or so, I thought this would be interesting Claude code project. So most of this is written by Claude. So, you know, that's the way it goes. So that's been an interesting experience as well. But why don't I take a second and just show you. Let's get started with this now. Can I do an F11 or maximize this? No. Okay. All right. We'll leave it as it is. Okay. So let's just take a so this so this is just running on my home computer at the moment. So these are the data sets that we have. We have the Toronto Lobbyist Registry, Ontario one, and a few other. Those are the heart and soul of it. And then the rest, we have political contributions database and the Ontario public accounts, and forget the federal one. We're not really interested in that. So let's take a look at what an engagement is. So, sorry, let me. So what we have is a list of what they call engagements. So the way lobbyists works is you register, and then once you register, you have a purpose and you have a goal and you have who you're, right? You may be representing someone else. You may be a government relations firm representing another company, or you may be working for the company and an in-house lobbyist. There's two kinds, in-house or consultant lobbyists. So in this case, Marissa Wise is an in-house lobbyist for Rogers Media. And then down here, oh, it's this one, isn't it? That's why it's not moving. Dylan Waldron from the Sussex Strategy Group is a consulting thing for the Rogers Sports and Entertainment. So, and if we want to look at what, I don't take all the stuff from the engagement details, but let's just see what it is in Toronto. They have to fill out when they do this, names and so on, particulars. They're looking at conversations on Yonge Dundas Square and so on. And then there's a list of communications. And some of these will last for years and we'll have many, many communications. And some they're like, you know what, we're just going to register this in case we want to talk about it, and no communications ever happen, right? So it's a bit of each there. So we got that in place, and you can look stuff up, but it's not really, I mean, there's always two parts to this, right? Data stuff is one part to this, but you know, to get stories out and to get things out, journalists do serve a purpose. They know what's going on. They know who the people are. They know the connections, and that's an important thing to bring into this any kind of civic investigation. If it work, then you know that's an important thing, and I wouldn't want to minimize that. But I thought, well, let's try to get a little further. Let's see if we can pick out from here a bit more about who's doing what. So, for example, I saw in let's look. So I mentioned that Waymo had started doing some lobbying around self-driving cars. And it's like, okay, so we know that someone called Takedra Mawakana is lobbying for Waymo, and we can actually see what they're talking about. But who is this? Like, and it's just a name, right? So I thought the next thing to try to do was to build profiles of each of these things that's going on. So if we look at Takedra, all right, so let's step back a little and say a little bit about technology on this, I guess. So it's a regular web app. It's you know, JavaScript front end, Python back end, and I throw the scrapes and the data into a DuckDB database, which is small and columnar, so good for queries. So that's the basis of it. I'm making it available at the moment just temporarily through a service called ngrok. As I say, it's running on my home computer. ngrok has nothing to do with Elon Musk's Grok. It's just a different thing. It's just a proxy service, right? So anyway, the search function, I should say, again, you don't want to just do full text search. It's a mixture of full text search. DuckDB has a built-in module that does a thing called BM25. Now you know as much about it as I do. Maybe you know more. And then on top of that, we do a semantic search with using some embeddings in this, and then rank those and hope to get most of the interesting things out. So if you search for rideshare platforms, you'll get Uber, but you also get Lyft and so on. So even if keywords don't appear. So that's what we do there. And then anyhow, so the next thing is to generate one of these profiles. So what does it do? We have separate sections in here. The top one, it's like, who is this? I thought, well, okay, the best way to do that is we'll send off a Google search, collect the top 5 or 6 results and ask Anthropic to provide a summary of it, right? So that's what that does. And so sometimes it's way off, you know, like the way things are. But most of the time, one of the good things is lobbyists do work in public communications. They usually have stuff out there. So there's usually at least a reasonable description of who they are and what their job is. And I sort of ask it to highlight any government relations and any controversies they've been involved in. So sometimes you get that, sometimes you don't. But anyhow, we've got that. And then the next thing is, well, what has this person done? They've represented 3 different companies. Well, actually, it's all the same. Waymo, Alphabet, so obviously the same thing, basically, and then some other holding company that probably sits in between. And then the third thing for individuals is I do also look at political contributions. And Takedra is actually co-CEO of Waymo. So she's based in Silicon Valley. So obviously there's no Ontario political contributions there. So I think the idea of that was to try to give kind of a little more richness to what's going on. And then let me take one more. I'm going to cheat and look directly to a lobby firm called OnPoint. So they represent a bunch of people, but let's just take a look at one of their people. So let's take Crystal Caputo. So this just, we won't go through the text, but basically a little bit about her, but then also all the people she represents, which is quite a lot, and then the political contributions that she's made. And then I think the idea also is that within here, what you'd like to be able to do is also do profiles of the consulting firm itself, so OnPoint in this case. So it's faced some controversy with reports indicating that one of its principals was investigated for compliance with lobbying laws. That was around the Greenbelt thing, I think. And then we look at their activity by client and then activity by individual lobbyists. So the idea here is to try to make it easier to explore, to get a little bit of context. Technology-wise, I had to do a couple of things. So one of the troubles is names, any of you, well, like names don't match, right? So I'm Tom Slee here, I'm Thomas Slee over here. You know, everyone's got variations. Companies get entered with ink in it or without ink in it, with capitals. My favorite lobbying firm is Hill Knowlton, who appear with a plus sign, with an ampersand, with and without spaces, with I don't know, an endless number of other variations. So doing that matching query is also tricky. There's nothing special that I'm doing there. Maybe again, some of you have done more of this than I have, so advice welcome. But basically, it's just like strip out all the excess stuff you can, make it case insensitive, and then try to find a match. And then also provide a facility for if you know a match, make it explicit. So, so I think it's expanding reasonably quickly in terms of what we can do. It seems to be useful for people who want to look at what's going on in a particular topic, but maybe, you know, if you're a journalist, you know exactly what question you want to ask. But if you want to say, well, here's a company, let's look at Enbridge gas company, for example. For the companies, I also provide a list of what the government funding they've received from Ontario government. So it helps you, I hope, to try to get a little bit more about each. And then the last few days, I've started to add in the other thing I was asked for was a recent activity kind of view of things. So instead of saying, I know what I want to look at, you might just have someone who has a broader interest, like, so what's happening at City Hall at the moment? What are people talking about? So I keep a list of new and updated Engagement. So up till the other day, 2 or 3 days ago, what's going on, and uh, then we can sort Ontario. We can look at the most active lobbying firms and also the most active. Come on. And the most active subjects that people talk about. So I think once you have stuff in place, it seems reasonably straightforward to start to try to get different views on it. I'd say currently this is a work in progress. A handful of people are using it and seem to have found it reasonably interested, which is why I thought I'd come and show it here. It's just software. It doesn't tackle the underlying issues, but why don't we leave it at that? And then if people do have questions, I would be very happy to answer.
Um, so how hard is it to join the unique entities, lobbies, companies, etc., between the Toronto Municipal Database and the Ontario database and the federal database?
You can get 90% of the way there, not without too much trouble. I mean, it's been 2 or 3 iterations. Partly I mean, essentially, I just try to have an algorithm for a canonical name, like a reduced name of something, and then a list of aliases that matches, and then apply that to the names in each database. In the end, they're all held in the same one, so then it's a join on the canonical name. And that gets most of them, but yeah, not all. I'd say at the moment, my experience is it's okay, is how I would rate it.
Thank you for the presentation. It's very interesting. I was wondering, I don't know too much about lobbying. Like, how is lobbying defined? Is it like when a person like meets with them in person, and what does it not include? Like, yeah, like how is it exactly defined?
It's basically if you are proactively wanting to talk to government and you have a financial interest in the outcome of something, that's, I think, then at that point, if you want to make those presentations through whatever medium, then it's up to you to register as a lobbyist. The financial interest is important because otherwise, like, I mean, everyone talks to politicians all the time, right? Not everyone, but collectively, we all talk to politicians all the time. So obviously most conversations don't count as lobbying. Lobbying does require a financial interest in the outcome. And then, as I say, then you register, and then you have various, then you have responsibilities to record what communications you have.
Ingrid asked, can this create reports based off of sorting or number of emails sent per topic?
Sorry?
Sorry, yeah, so the question is, can this create reports based off of sorting or number of emails sent per topic?
So there's a couple of types of sorting that I do. So if we look at the search results here, I mean, there's a relevance score that is done by both full text search matching and semantic matching. So that's one kind of ranking that it does. But then once you've got a result set, you can do by others. I don't do by activity within a particular engagement. If I can just go back to Anna's question for a second, I just picked up one engagement here at Toronto, and you can see the kind of, now this is almost all meetings that's been going on the right there. But often you'll see telephones and email contacts and all kinds of activities there. It would be possible to do, if you wanted, I guess the idea there would be, you want to know which engagements are particularly active, and therefore you want to know about number of communications going on. That would certainly be possible for Toronto. Unfortunately, not for the Ontario level. They just don't record the individual communications. But it's a nice idea. It would be good to do.
Okay, thank you. And next up, we have JJ. Would you like to ask the question yourself?
Sure. Tom, basically, when I've tried to search these things manually, usually you're given the option to search by keyword. So you want to find out who's lobbying on a certain topic, but then you have to sort of divine how either the regulator or the lobbyist would characterize that topic. And that's how a lot of stuff gets hidden, and it's really hard to put together. Like if you're not interested in a specific client. So I'm wondering if that's something that the lobby horse can help improve, like the detection rate, the hit rate a little bit. Does it like
should
make
do.
sense? Yeah.
Yeah, it should do. So I say the search is combines two types. One is full text, so it is just like, hey, take us to a search here. Or just search for Uber. So it will just find things with the word Uber in it. But in addition, there's now things called semantic search, which it basically takes the entries in an engagement and it kind of gets a meaning of it, and then it finds things that it takes your search terms, which in this case is just Uber, and it says like find the things that mean something like Uber. So then down here, actually not so much in the probably not so much in the Toronto. Oh well, maybe in the Toronto one. Somewhere in here we should have yeah. So if you go down here, for example, you'll have entries with Lyft, which won't actually mention Uber, but they're obviously related. So yeah, it should help to surface some things where the words themselves are not there.
That's amazing.
Which I think is what you're asking.
You mentioned briefly various strengths and weaknesses of the legislation at different levels for lobbyist registration. What are the like big differences people should know about, and what should people sort of understand is not represented in this data because there are gaps in the legislation?
So one of the things about doing the technology side is I don't know a whole lot about the regular, so I'm probably not the best person to respond to this. I will say there was a really good article in the Narwhal like a week or two by someone called Julia, someone Rutgers, which went through a whole bunch of things that they've been looking at. She'd been looking at about the lobbyist registry in Manitoba and its limitations and strengths. There's certainly always going to be cases, I mean, where conversations happen which aren't in there, and I guess that's always going to be an issue. I don't think, to be honest, I don't think I can offer very much more. If anyone else has something more on that, who knows more about the regulatory side of this, feel free to add. But
have you like thought about going and connecting lobbyists from LinkedIn and looking at their CVs and kind of doing the overlaps of the different organizations or former workplaces that they may have?
It comes up a little bit in that usually if you do a profile search on if you build a profile for a lobbyist, as I say, it gets the first number of searches. And I say most of these people are communications people. Their LinkedIn is pretty well maintained. So so here, his second one is there. So it at least gets I haven't used any of the LinkedIn APIs or anything. I haven't done that, but it does get their public stuff and then summarizes that.
All right, I think that's it for the Q&A section. But again, if you do need to speak to Tom later on, he'll be available both online and in person. So we'll create a breakout room online and shuttle you to a side of the room and you guys can have your chat. All right.
So just to finish off, so I say it's a work in progress. It's available to a limited number of people at the moment. I'm just sort of looking at how to make it available as a more permanent search. So if anyone's interested in that, then do let me know, and I'd be happy to provide access.
Thank you for answering that. That was going to be my question to you in the breakout room. Oh, well, all right. Okay, so we're entering the hack night. Oh yes. Oh my God. Thank you so much.